Welcome to Kadam, the Small Steps podcast, where we try to showcase individual perspectives of recent graduates about different pathways of life. I am Arjit Singh, and today I will continue to try to uncover what it means to have a traditional career. Women in design, women in sport, women in the world, women of the world, women's rights movements, women power in the world, that is still very divided. Women are often paid lesser in many fields, even in 2021. If you don't believe this fact, you're either not trying to notice it or you're part of the problem yourself. Women in India and other countries and cultures still eat after their men counterparts in the same dishes. Women are still looked down upon if they decide to stand up for their rights. Women are still beaten down, both physically and emotionally, by men that I personally believe are not manly at all. I shared this with you because today I believe this will be a topic that comes up often because of what our guest has gone through in her field. So let's start the show. She is currently a production designer at Expo Displays in Birmingham, Alabama, and is also a junior varsity assistant coach. Some other experiences she's had include being a head coach for a volleyball team, a lab technician caring for crops, and a part-time sales and design associate where she worked before graduation. She's an exceptionally talented artist, and some of her work, including her charcoal portraits on her website, talk for themselves. She has a collection of her sketchbooks that she has been working on since she was 3. After her first commissioned freelance role, where she designed invitations for a fundraising party, she fell in love with branding, and it continues to be one of her favorite things. Being the youngest employee and one of 8 females in a company of approximately 101 women in 12 designers, she says she has gradually picked up commanded respect. Let's hear more about it all from none other than Katy Kirkpatrick. Welcome to the show,
Hey,
Katy, and
it
thank you so
still
much for
sounds
coming on.
weird when you say Katy Kirkpatrick. I can't get used
Yeah. Hey, like
to
congratulations on the recent wedding.
Thank you. No, it was fun. It was a good time.
Yeah. And I mean, first of all, like again, like I think we all need to congratulate you for that because I mean, yes, you not just moved into a different part or like part of your life, but I think with everything going on, with COVID and stuff like that, and still being able to overcome all that to be with your partner and get married. So kudos to you for that. Congratulations
Oh,
again.
hey, COVID gave me the best wedding I could have ever had.
Really.
24 people in the middle of the desert. Like, you
Hmm.
can't get better than that. Like, the COVID wedding was the way to go, and I would not have rather had it any other way.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And hey, it all works out in the end, right? So it almost feels like this was meant to be. So great, Katie. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So while we're on that topic, I want to start with that. I know that there's an interesting story about how you met your husband, and I would love if you could share that with us.
Oh, God. Okay. So when I was in the 7th grade, I went to a kindergarten through 12th grade private school in Huntsville, Alabama, and it was really small, like 100 kids per grade. And it's small private schools for people that are listening that don't know. Like when you're in middle school, you go to all the varsity sports games. Like everyone from the school, kindergarten through 12th grade, like shows out for varsity basketball games. When I was in 7th grade, me and my little middle school girlfriends were doing middle school girl things, and we're all like sitting in the bleachers at every basketball game, pointing at the boys on the basketball court. We're like, I'm gonna marry him. I'm gonna marry him. And I would always point at who is now my husband. Um, and I would always point at Todd, and I would be like, yeah, I'm gonna marry him. And if any of those other girls were like, no, I'm gonna marry, I was ready to fight. Like, no, you're not. I
That's
am.
incredible.
And to all of those girls that thought that they were gonna marry Todd, look at me now. I won. But
That's
so
awesome.
I like had this middle school crush on him, and then got to high school, forgot all about it. He went off to college, whatever. And then he came back and he was actually coaching at my school for the boys basketball program while I was playing for the girls basketball program. And I would still like get caught staring at him all the time by like my teammates and my coach, be like, you're doing it again. Like, stop. Like, that's enough. And I just had the biggest crush on him, but I would never say a word to him. And then I graduated and went off to Auburn
Right.
and forgot all about it. And then one day on online dating, we matched and I was like, holy
Oh.
shit. Like
It's
I
happening. It's finally happening.
no, I remember like I screamed and I threw my phone. I was like, this isn't real. Like this
Yeah.
cannot be real. And
Crazy.
then the rest is history. And now he is my husband.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's funny.
from school to, you know, to what you are now, like it just that's an amazing story. Thank you so much
Literally
for
making
sharing that.
goo eyes at him. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, women in sports, just because, that's something where you started, let's say, looking at your like now husband, or just like, being there actually playing, and, being a part of the team, being a part of the crowd. So coaching volleyball for a while, and now into like varsity coaching as well, being one of the main things that you do daily. What are your best and worst experiences from that, right? So if you've ever coached, let's say, a bunch of guys, how did that go? Or like, if was there ever a time where somebody told you that you couldn't do it?
Um, it wasn't necessarily that anyone else was telling me that I couldn't do it. Sometimes I would get in like my own head, like I can't do it. Like I would have so I started coaching like young girls, like 12-year-olds that are just learning how to play the sport. And I can't empathize with this. And Todd really helped me because he's so tall, but like tall kids, like when they have that first growth spurt, have no coordination, like no perception for how long their limbs are. And they just look like, you see videos of like baby giraffes or like baby deer or horses like getting birthed and like trying to walk and like
Just
falling.
crashing.
That's what all kids look like playing sports in middle school. Like that's
Me.
literally what they look like. And like as a coach and like as someone that's been around volleyball for so long, like I know those tall girls can be so good, but dang, like when they're middle schoolers, it is so frustrating. And I would have like tall girls on my team or be coaching tall girls or helping in a clinic and just catch myself getting so frustrated. Like, I don't know how to break through to this kid. Like, I don't know how to do it. And then Todd would like teach me things like with kids, like a good example is like I had this one girl that was so tall, she would like curl her shoulders over instead of like keeping her back flat in an athletic stance and would just be like curled into a ball, like hunched
Yeah.
over. And Todd would teach me a trick of like, okay, tell her to pretend that there's a stack of books like between her shoulder blades and she has to pinch that.
Mm,
And since he coached, like being able to bounce stuff off of him was always so helpful when I got in that mindset. But then there's a whole aspect of the game that's like the mental and
right.
like mental toughness is
Yeah.
my biggest thing as a coach is mental toughness and character. Like I want to improve the girls and some of those I will be completely honest, I'm scared of middle schoolers. Those girls are mean. Like they are mean.
No
And there's
filter.
some girls that like they've got major attitudes. And like at
Yeah.
the beginning of the season, I'm like, man, I don't know how I'm going to do it. Like, I don't know how I'm going to break through to this kid. But then by the end of the season, like, they've come leaps and bounds just from like being hard on them and telling them, like, hey, that's not cool. And there's a consequence and being able to counteract that. But there's definitely times like in coaching that in my head, I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do this. Like, especially dealing with parents. Mm-mm. As soon as a parent calls me, I see that on my caller ID. I'm like, oh Lord, here we go.
Yep.
But then in the end, it's always fine. You just gotta power through.
Yeah, definitely. And, from that too, you mentioned basically just like telling them sometimes that it's not cool, and, basically making sure that they're not disrespecting you to a certain extent. And so, you also said in an answer in our survey earlier about commanding respect, and that comes a little bit from your job and stuff like that too. But can you share your experience from being like a coach, but also one of the youngest and sometimes the only woman on a team? And you mentioned it was hard standing up for yourself sometimes, when you were being talked over. So how did you overcome that, and what would be some advice for anybody in the same boat? And according to you, like, what role, positive or negative, does challenging, the beliefs of others and yourself play sometimes? Because you also mentioned that, sometimes you were questioning yourself and your abilities. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So coaching wise, like the only people that ever questioned me were the kids, which it was easy for me to flush that out of my head because like, you're 12, you've never played this sport before. Like, what do you know? And then same with the parents, be like, oh, you're a parent with a kid on a team. You are so far removed from this situation. Like, question me all you want. At the end of the day, I'm still the coach and we're still going to win. So, and, but more so like being a female in the workplace, like in my job and like my main career in design, it became very evident very soon that I nobody was respecting me. Like nobody respected my opinion. Nobody respected the education that I had and the weight that that carried. Nobody respected the experience that I had. Like I would be in meetings sometimes and a project manager leading the meeting would look directly to me and ask me a question and another person in the room would start answering for me. Like people would answer for me in meetings. Like my opinion, I would do something a certain way and then would be told like, "Oh no, do it this way." And then when I did it that way, the main boss, like the production manager would be like, "Why did it get done like this?" And then the person that told me to change it would take credit and say like, "Oh, she must have misunderstood me. I said to do it like this," and would
Right.
explain the way that I originally had it
Yeah.
as if that was his idea.
And I think you
And it
shared one
was
of those stories too with me, like about a certain incident, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something with like some engineering or something that he wanted you to do, and then it just wasn't that.
yeah,
Right.
it would get so taken like far taken out of context and especially by people that like didn't have the training and experience that I had. Like I went to
Yeah.
school
Right.
for this. Like this is a skill that I have spent 4 years curating.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
somebody that did something completely different, and that's not to knock like what they did. They're just different things, and it was more of one of those things where in my head silently I would catch myself all the time being like, man, I wish like I would just stay in his lane. Like I fully capable of this. But then it started happening so much that I started questioning like, okay, am I good enough at this? Like, is this what I really should be doing? Like, am I actually as good at this as I think I am? But
Hmm.
then I would get like the validation through clients, like seeing a completed trade show booth, like on the floor, like 3 days of setup, and the client shows up and the booth set, and all they have to do is place their product, and like the look on their faces, and them telling us, like, this is amazing. Like, this is the best booth we've ever had. We're so excited for this show. And just like all of that made me realize, okay, this isn't a me problem. This is a them problem. And I'm not gonna stretch out on a limb and say like everyone that ever did anything like that was sexist. Like everyone only did that to me because I'm young and because I'm a woman. But some of them absolutely did it for that reason. And
Totally.
that got
Yeah.
so frustrating of just the being talked over and the looked down on and just not having respect. So when I started getting the validation from clients and understanding like it's a them problem, I started speaking up for myself. So sometimes I did not go about it the best way. So my advice to other people is don't be so abrasive in the beginning, especially like after dealing with it for a long time. Like I was angry, like every time, like it would just make me so angry. It made me very emotional. I let my emotions affect how I reacted to it. So sometimes I would be very abrasive in the command respect. And I don't think command respect has to be something abrasive. I think command respect is when you realize you're being disrespected, speak up. And you can do that in a kind way and say, like, hey, I don't really appreciate the way that you're talking to me. Or say, like, hey, we're all on the same team here trying to solve the same problem. Let's figure this out together.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of, I mean, sometimes I would look at people I worked with and be like, you know what? F you, man. Like, you suck. Leave me alone. And not necessarily like it got the point across, but I also think that it was too abrasive of an approach. And it was because I let it go for so long, and it would get
It
like
like
my
build up.
emotions would get into play. Like it
Yeah.
just built up so much that even like the littlest stuff, like the things that really weren't that big of a deal, and the things that weren't necessarily because someone was doing it because I'm a woman and I'm young. It was just someone that didn't really understand what they were saying and like the gravity of what they were saying. And I just like would snap at them. And I do kind of regret that. But then I started finding that balance of being firm of, hey, that's pretty disrespectful. I don't appreciate that. And being just rude. And two wrongs don't make a right. And it took me a
Right.
while to find that balance. But once I did, like, I started moving so much further in my career. And once I was getting respected by people and people were understanding, like, I started carrying that weight of, okay, she knows what she's doing. And people would start coming to me and asking me questions about, like, what do you think about this? How should we tackle this? Or coming up with solutions. And that's when I knew that I had found that balance of commanding the respect when people started coming to me and asking me for advice on stuff.
Yeah, that is something that definitely I think plays along with what you mentioned about, being able to say that my work is good enough, So knowing that, not just letting other people tell you that, but also like believing in that. And so when you had the clients tell you that, I think it gave you a little bit more confidence to actually like stand up for yourself a little bit, right? So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so that definitely makes a lot of sense. And you know coming off of that too, like you said that sometimes there were things that kind of broke you down, or you were questioning your own abilities, right? And so that happened a couple of times. I don't know if that's what really happened in college, but there was a couple of times in college when you like thought that maybe you weren't in the right field, or you wanted to switch majors and do something else. And you also later said, and I quote, I wouldn't change much about the past, because I've started looking at where I am now and taking the time to be proud of myself. I think it's really important to acknowledge your own accomplishments as you grow, end quote. And related or unrelated to the course of study you chose, what was a mistake you think you made that you still remember from the past, and how did you work on getting it out of your system?
Oh, made a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes.
Hey, we all learn from them, right?
Um, oh yeah. No, I think one of the mistakes that I made early on was I thought art and design were the same thing. And it is not at all. I almost came into industrial design just like cocky, to be honest. Like, just I'm the shit. Like, I'm good at this. Yeah, I can draw charcoal portraits really, really well. I didn't know what I was doing in industrial design. Like, if I could go back and look at freshman year me, I would be like, sit down. Like, just sit down and listen. Like, listen to what you're trying to be taught. Like, these people are trying to teach you something, and it
Right.
has nothing to do with charcoal portraits.
Yeah.
And I thought that, like, yeah, I'm just artistic and creative and I'm really good at art, so I'm going to be good at design. That's not necessarily true. Like, you remember we have professors that told people, like, you would be better as an artist. You're more of an artist than a designer.
Totally. Yeah.
Like, there is a distinction, and there's nothing wrong with being an artist and there's nothing wrong with being a designer, but it's a different skill set, and it's finding that balance and that happy medium of the two to make good design. And I wish that I had realized that earlier on and realized that art and design are not the same thing, you know?
Yeah. And what do you think you would have done if you realized it sooner? And how soon are we talking?
I'm talking like in summer op,
Okay,
like
so just before we, let's say, started the program.
before I even got into the program, like in the summer entrance, like competition, whatever
Right.
you want to call it,
Yeah,
like the
yeah, yeah.
Hunger Games of industrial design.
Yeah, just so people
I
like,
wish,
just for those that don't know, because we've mentioned summer up, I feel like so many times during the podcast, just because I've
yeah.
had some of the friends from there, but like a lot of people just don't know what summer up is. So just for those people, so it's like you were saying.
Yeah, it's like you have 45 spots and you have like 70 or more people depending on the year fighting
Yeah,
for those 45 spots, and it's based on the rankings. So like in technical, like you have 3 sections, and in the first section I was killing it. Like I
yeah.
was doing so good, and that like went straight to my head, and I
Mm.
was like, man, this is gonna be a breeze. And then when I got into the program and I took that first studio, I got a C, and I was shocked. I
Right.
was like, oh my God. Like
Yeah.
I was getting all A's when everyone else was getting F's. And here we are in the program, and that had nothing to do with this. Why am I not good at this?
Mm.
And it was because I wasn't listening. Like I wasn't, like I just thought, oh, I'm good at this. And
Right.
I just wasn't listening. And it took me like at least that entire first semester to
Just to
understand
realize.
like
Yeah.
it's different and to be humbled, honestly. Like I really needed to be humbled.
Hey, I mean, I think we all do in certain parts of life, just like whether that is, saying that you're going to get a job or with scores and stuff like that too. Like just recently, I've been applying to universities and stuff, and when I get a rejection, I almost feel like I don't deserve it, kind of,
Yeah,
uh
it's like,
eh,
who do you think you are to reject me?
right.
Not
And
me.
exactly. I mean, no, so like to a certain extent, I feel like yes, I'm capable enough, and if given the opportunity, of course, we think that we can do stuff, with whatever that might be. But now that I look from, let's say, a step or 3 steps back, I feel like there definitely is, skills that I can still learn and gain from until I'm one of the best to be able to say, yes, there's no way I'm not going to be admitted to a certain program, and I think that comes along with what's going on right now too, with how many applications, let's say, this year have been turned in for colleges and stuff. And I don't know if you know anything about that, but just because of COVID and layoffs and stuff, there's just a huge amount of applications, right? So for
Oh,
me,
wow.
I think it definitely almost feels like there's a lot of people that have applied, and there definitely are a lot of people that are so much better than I am right now at the things that I want to be doing, not just the things that I
Mhm.
know, but also the ones that I will accrue as part of the next program. So yeah, I think it definitely, like we all do, need a little bit of humbling here every now and then. And so, I've taken a
Oh,
step back and I've learned that, yeah, even though I am trying to learn some new skills here and again, but I feel like there's still a long way to go before I can actually say that I'm really good at them.
mhm.
Yeah. So let's see. Okay, so now that you are married, and I might be wrong, but I feel like you get a little bit busier with the everydays of life. How do you choose what kind of work and things you want to invest your time and money in? And this can be anywhere from trading stocks, or, like you mentioned about your husband, like trying to learn golf and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Or it might just not be picking up a certain freelance job for some reason, or saying no to dinner with someone. And how do you keep life from being monotonous as well?
I actually have the perfect example because a couple weeks ago, I started talking to someone in Birmingham locally about doing a mural, like on a building in Birmingham. And I was so excited because it's beside this new bar that's gotten really I mean, I say new bar, it's been there for a few years, but it's gotten very popular amongst like people our age, like people like out of college, but still freshly out of college. So I was really excited about this project to do like this big mural that everyone was going to see, and it was going to be my art in Birmingham. And then last week, I went to meet with the guy that owned the building, and so it's for a company that sells like CBD and Delta 8 products. And I mean, I don't blame him. Like, he owns the weed company, so he was stoned the whole time. And like, I just wanted, like, I just was trying, like, I went there to flush out a concept and figure out what I was going to paint. And
The
we
man's
kept
just hot.
bouncing from like concept to concept to concept, and they were all so different, like so different. And he would tell me to do one thing and then it would be completely different. And I was like, man,
Dude.
I don't even want to do this anymore. Like,
Right.
this is my free time. Like, I go back and forth with clients to like make something that was mine theirs for my career. So in my free time, like doing freelance stuff, like I don't want to go back and forth with you over and over and over again like you're a client at my job. Like, I almost want to just show you, hey, I'll paint this. And you either say yes or you say no. And if you say no, I go on to the next person. Hey, I'll paint this. And I'm fine with little minor tweaks and adjustments, like make it our colors or do this or do that. But
Yeah, they're just reasonable things.
complete stylistic changes and like content changes, and just, it was ridiculous. So I eventually just told him, I was like, I don't feel like we are seeing eye to eye and we're on the same page about what this final product needs to look like. So thank you. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you considering me for this project, but I don't feel like I'm the right person for the project for you.
Yep.
So that's kind of like how I pick and choose with creative stuff of like, I don't want to do something too similar to my job, which is hard because I'm in a creative field.
Right.
So it's not necessarily the creative, but it's like how I interact with clients and like what I'm making is different. And I don't want to do the back and forth. I don't want to go through 9 revisions on something that like I came to you and said, hey, I'll do this.
Yeah, and it's also because it's art. It's like a lot of times with art, it's a little bit different. With design, of course, there are iterations and there are just things that you need to tweak and stuff. But with art, it's like if it's flowing, and if you're in the flow, you don't really want to change it in the end, because it's what really, I think, comes out the first time that sometimes doesn't the second,
Mhm.
So definitely. And again, I feel like maybe there's a balance to how you do that with choosing what you want to do and whatnot. But what about money? Like, you did mention a story, and you can share that if you want, about the golf lessons.
Yeah,
So
I'll briefly share it. He might
okay,
have my
perfect.
head, but I don't really care.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you have like budgeting, right? And budgeting is important, and you want to take into account like what you're spending your money on. And if you budget properly, there is leftover money at the end of it. Like, after you, like Rich Britnell says, pay yourself first and then pay everything. Like, after you put money in your savings and then you pay all your bills and you take care of those things, like if you budget appropriately, there's money left over for some fun stuff. And I choose those fun things based on like what's fulfilling, like
value.
what is something that like I can do, and then immediately after doing it, like I just feel good.
Correct.
And I mean, now that I'm married, like we share that, and that leftover money is like, oh, I don't get to be the only one that has the fun stuff. Like, we have to both get fun stuff, and
Can't
it's
just
not
go out and
fair.
buy a cookie.
No, it's like, dang, this man taking my extra money. Like, it's not like that. I kid, but for Todd, like one of his things, He loves basketball, and when COVID started, there was no pickup basketball anymore. They took all the rims off of the public courts. Like, you could not play basketball anywhere. So when that happened, he picked up golf, which, mind you, if anyone's thinking of picking up golf, it is the most expensive sport / hobby that you can decide to pick up out of nowhere. It
Crazy
is
expensive.
so
Yep.
expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that's fine and it's justified, and we make it work because it's something that truly fulfills him. Now, sometimes it does get a little out of control. Like I told you, he had wanted to go do this golf lesson. We were like, oh, yeah, sure. Like, we can have this golf lesson. It'll be great. You're going to love it, blah, blah, blah. And he had talked about like maybe doing a package, maybe not. We didn't know. And then he comes home from the golf lesson, and the single golf lesson turned into like triple the price because he decided to sign up for the package that day. And I was like, whoa, like, what are you doing? But at the end of the day, like, was I that mad about it? No. Was I a
Yeah.
little frustrated? Yeah, but it's something that like genuinely fulfills him and like makes him
Right.
happy. And it's something that for him, like for me, my art, like I buy art supplies with like my spare money. I buy
Okay.
art supplies.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions
That's
too. Yeah.
yeah. So I'll buy art supplies and stuff, and it's like, okay, that brings me joy, and golf brought him joy. Do I wish we hadn't spent that much money in one day on all these golf lessons? Yeah. Is it the end of the world? No. But I'm also lucky enough that I have a partner in life that I can go to when something like that happens and be like, hey, that is really frustrating, and be able to explain why, and him be able to be like, you know what? I didn't think about it that way. I'm so sorry. Next
Right.
time I'll talk to you about it. We can have a conversation, and to be able to have someone that I can express that frustration to, and we can both stay calm, and it's not a knockout, drag out fight, you know?
Yeah.
Nice.
And sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, so I think it's taboo to talk about finances, and I think finding someone, and especially in a relationship, being able to discuss finances and not argue about it is the healthiest thing that you can look for.
Right. And going off of that too, I think, you mentioned you buying art supplies, right? Versus him buying, let's say, like a golf lesson, right? So what kind of
Mhm.
value is it bringing into your relationship or into your personal lives? I think that's definitely something that makes a difference about how you're spending your finances, but also I think, how you're utilizing them in the long run, right? So with your art supplies, let's say if you're creating like a charcoal portrait and you're selling that, then that becomes freelance work. So. And so you don't really spend the money on it more than you, of course, spend the time, let's say, creating a masterpiece, right? And then selling that for whatever price that might be, right? And so for him, I feel like with golf, let's say that he gets to meet people where he can have those connections where they're going to be in the long run helpful for him, let's say if he goes into a business venture or anything like that. So is he getting to spend that time, in that sense? So I'm just thinking positively, thinking
Yeah.
about how you could use those things and actually not say that you're spending money on them, but you're spending, of course, a little bit of resource, but you're gaining a lot more resource out of that.
Oh, absolutely. You gain just like peace of mind, just
Oh yeah,
happiness.
totally. Yeah,
Like,
one of the biggest
just,
things. Yep.
it's so worth it. Like,
Hmm.
he came home from that golf lesson so excited. Like,
Elated.
he had
Yeah.
the best time, like literally like a little kid, just so
Yeah.
excited about it. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like, seeing that he was excited about it also made it easy for me to not be like ready to rip his head off. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think that's definitely like with happiness too, and that was gonna be my next question, like, but with happiness, I think it's one of those things where if, he is bringing that into the house, then that's positive energy that's helping you go through life one day at a time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I mean, if he's coming home sad that he did not get to, let's say, do the weekly golf lesson or something, or like the package, then, he's bringing other like energy into it. He's bringing home things that, he's like, oh, I couldn't get to do that, and with money, I think, yeah, like, you've got to save and you've got to do all those things and think about budgeting and whatnot. But at the same time, I feel like in the past few, let's say, months or a couple of years, I've definitely learned that it's not that big a deal. I mean, yeah, if you don't have the savings, yeah, you're living paycheck to paycheck and whatnot. But with COVID, like, I've seen so many people like just, lose everything. If they've lost a person that they used to be with, like, it's just totally different for them. Like people that have lost their, let's say, 27-year-old son, or there's families that have lost 3 or 4 people together. At that point, what is the money going to do? you know so did
Yeah,
you
at the
enjoy
end of
the
the
time?
day, it's not about the money. Like,
Exactly, yeah.
not about the money.
It's about the value, yeah, that anything kind of brings to your life and to your relationships and to just everyday things, right? So what do
Mhm.
you think will provide most happiness, and what are your biggest goals moving forward? So these can be small or big, short term or long term. And you may talk about your recent promotion, having a job in this market, or just the happiness that a team selections bring when one of your students gets selected.
Yeah, so I mean, my biggest goals moving forward, like I said earlier, I think it's really important before you start looking to the future to be proud of where you are. And before you start saying like I want this, I want that, to be grateful for what you do have. I think if you don't do that, it makes it really easy to lead a life that you're unhappy because you never are focusing on what you do have and you're always focusing on the next thing. So
Right.
before I say my goals, like I think everyone should take a minute and just like acknowledge where they are now because it's different than it was yesterday and it's different than last week and it's different from last year. Like everyone is in a different place. Like we're all moving in a direction and keeping that positive. Like the things that make me the happiest now, like the things that fulfill me the most is quite frankly like my volleyball team, like the girls on my team doing well and seeing them like this past season we won our first tournament. Like we got gold medal and a bid to nationals, like right out the gate. We had a solid team and being able to see not only like the girls be successful, but like grow as young women and grow as people in their character. And one of my things that made me the happiest I've been in such a long time is every single one of them made their middle school teams.
That's
And that was
amazing.
like awesome. Like all of them,
Yeah.
some of them were so worried, and some of the ones that were so worried reminded me of myself. They had no reason to be worried. Like
Right.
they had the technical skills and fundamentals, but like being proud of where you are. Like I just got a promotion at work and I just got a job coaching high school volleyball at an amazing athletic program. I'm really excited about it. And being grateful that, like, yeah, COVID hit people really hard. A lot of people, especially in the trade show industry, they don't have a job anymore. Like, they've had to completely change course. And I can be grateful that I still have a job, like, after COVID hit that industry so hard. And not only did I have a job, but like my career is still moving forward. But goals moving like in the future, I want to start, I don't know. I think I want to do more artwork on the side. I think I want to paint the city of Birmingham in my art. Like I want to do murals
Awesome.
all over Birmingham.
Yeah.
Is a goal of mine. And then long term, so my new boss, like in my new position, she has all of the designers write down like their 1, 3, and 5-year goals, like as it pertains to your career. So like long term for me, 10-year goal, I want to be the creative director. Like I want to be the top line of like the creative process. And I want to be the one like dishing out projects and doing that part of it and managing all of it. Yeah, I want to show, like, I don't know, this is so cheesy, but like I just want to show, I want to get far enough that I can show girls, like young girls, like you can do it. Like,
Right.
don't let anyone treating you differently or even just straight up telling you no, you can't, stop you from just going for it. And I think that's one of the reasons I get such benefit out of coaching my volleyball teams, is seeing these girls and like empowering them and showing them like you can do it. And like, yeah, I coach volleyball, but I'm not just a volleyball coach. Like, I do all this stuff. I work around a bunch of men and I'm really good at it. Like, being able to show them like you can be proud of yourself. Like, as a woman, you don't have to be like humble all the time. You don't have to be modest all the time. If you're good at something, then say you're good at something. Like, be
Totally.
proud of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely like, and I think we've talked about this before too, with even like speaking up against, sometimes the closest people that there are to you, right? So whether that is your parents or whether that is, your mentors or somebody, but if people don't believe in you, I think speaking up at that time too can definitely help, and just being confident in what you think you're doing right, And a lot of times I think that's what happens is we get confused when other people are telling us it's not the right thing or something like that, and we're stuck and we think, okay, maybe I need to rethink this. But that ends up like almost bringing us back from what we could have done, right? So, or we could have achieved just because we were doubting our own selves because of other people. So just definitely making sure that you're pushing through without thinking that, anything's going to stop you if you really believe what you're doing is right, you know?
Nobody knows what they're doing, and if somebody tries to tell you know what they're doing, they're full of shit. Like,
Exactly.
nobody
Yeah.
knows what they're doing. Everyone is learning as they go, literally everyone, even like the oldest people that have been in an industry for the longest amount of time,
Right.
still learn new stuff. Like,
Yeah.
if someone makes you feel inferior because they are saying they know better than you or they know more than you, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Like, use that as an opportunity to learn like what they're trying to teach you, but at the same time, don't let that make you feel like you're not good enough.
Totally. Totally. And even at the biggest stages or the biggest positions in companies, definitely, with COVID and stuff too, I think everybody has seen that, to a certain extent where they're like, okay, yeah, like even if I'm a manager, I can be fired, or even if I own this company, it can just be, there just can be one day where we're just not running anymore, right? Or we're just not getting the same finances and I'm being hit too, just because I have to pay these salaries. And at the end of the day, do I have anything for myself? Maybe, maybe not, right? And so,
Yeah.
like you said, just with people not knowing what they're doing at any stage of their lives, I think it's definitely true because, everybody has their own struggles. And, whether that is being able to retire, let's say at 60, 65, whatever that might be, or being able to say, I've like given my kids the values that I wanted to, whatever, it could be whatever.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is a great point, Katie, and thank you so much for sharing that. So other than that, is there anything else that you think that we have missed, or anything that you think you want to talk about? What would be, let's say, one advice that you would share with everybody?
Um, I mean, playing off of like, there's two main things that I think are the biggest takeaways that I have gotten from, I mean, I'm still young. I'm still very early into my career, but two things that I've really hammered home is, one is that nobody knows what they're doing. Literally no one knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
Everyone, like, for the first time, everyone does something for the first time. And
truly.
being awful at something and not knowing what you're doing is the first step at being good at something. Nobody is
Totally.
just like inherently has the knowledge to be
Mhm.
able to accomplish something. And it takes work and it takes effort. And don't let anyone stand in the way. Like, if you want to learn something, go for it. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're supposed to know something. No, you're not. And then the
Right.
other thing is like, before I started working, like I knew that there's a wage gap, and I knew that like women aren't treated fairly, and like I knew that, but I hadn't really experienced it. So I was like, it's not all women. Not all women experience it. And I'm just talking about like being treated differently in the workplace. Like I thought like, yeah, I can see how like at some companies that might be the culture, or like some women might deal with that. I had no idea. What a fool I was to think that not everyone dealt with it in some capacity. Um, and it's ridiculous. Like if you're a woman listening to this, don't let that get to you. Like I said earlier, I got to the point where I just bottled it up so much that when it would happen, I would be almost abrasive and just like rude about it. And that's not a way to command respect. That's not a way to get what you want out of the situation. Speak firmly and speak kindly and stand up for yourself if something's not right. And if you're not a woman listening to this and you're in a field, take chance and take opportunity to like notice when something isn't exactly right. Like sitting in meetings when when a woman gets asked a question directly and someone starts talking over them, or they start saying an idea but they didn't say it quite loud enough and someone else says it louder. Stand up for those women in your career. Like stand up for the women around you and tell people like, hey, that's not okay. And that doesn't mean that you have to like be confrontational and combative in the moment. You could after the meeting pull someone aside and be like, hey, so
That
she
wasn't
got
cool.
asked
Yeah.
that question and you really talked over her, and that probably didn't make her feel very good. And stuff like that. It's just be conscious of how you treat people, and not just women, be conscious of how you treat people, but also stand up for the people around, like stand up for women in the workplace. There's so many times that people told me, like would come up to me after a meeting or something like that happened and be like, that was messed up. Like that was not cool. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, that's validating. But if you notice that it was that messed up, why didn't you say anything? Like if you knew that was my idea that this person's taking credit for, why didn't you speak up? And I think it's really important to know that it is real. It is very prevalent and it does take a toll on people. Like it's not fun to be treated differently for something that you can't control. The only thing you should be judged on in your career is based on what work you can do and the quality of work that you can do, like how good you are at doing it. That should not be based on your gender. It should not be based on your age. It should not be based on your race, your sexual orientation. It should not be based on anything other than your ability to do the job that you were hired to do.
I think also
And
just like being respectful. I think that's a huge one for me, at least. I feel like, yes, being able to provide the work, but also like being good, like natured, just being able to
oh
help
yeah,
people. So I think that's a big one too. Just
no, and
just adding to that.
just being a good person. Like it's not hard. My main thing that I've been saying a lot lately, like when I notice something that I don't like, instead of just calling that person out, I just look at people all the time and I'm like, that wasn't a very kind thing to say. And that shakes people to their core. Like
Totally.
you
Yeah.
would be like you don't have to call people names and stoop to their level. If you just look at someone after they say something to you and say, well, that wasn't a very kind thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
Those people like are shook. They're shocked that like
Yeah.
you have this calm reaction and have just basically called them out and being like, you are mean. Like that was mean is
Yep.
way more effective in my experience than telling someone like, well, you da 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 da. Like
Right.
it's so much more effective to just look at someone and be like, that wasn't very kind.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it almost breaks the barrier to where they're standing and they're thinking, I'm just doing everything right, or their cockiness is coming in their way. But when that shield, I think, gets shattered, is when sometimes they even realize, okay, there are some people that are just not going to care even after you tell them, but there's others
Yeah.
that just like, take a step back and say, okay, yes, maybe I did overstep my or overstay my time here, or stuff like that. So definitely, again, being humbling. And I think something like that can be humbling for them sometimes, at
No,
least
and
those
those
that
people
as
that
at least those that care. Yeah.
yeah, and those people that don't care even after you tell them, screw those people. The only person that gives power to those people's words and actions is you. Those people don't go home at night and think, oh, I talked over her in the meeting, or I took credit for her job, or I said something blatantly sexist and rude and hurtful to this person.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go home at night and think about it. You do. And
Yep.
you give power to those people's words, and you give all of your energy to that. You buy into it. And it's so easy to say, brush it off and forget about it. It's the easiest thing to say and it's the hardest thing to do, but it's so beneficial to just your own mental health and well-being and serenity, just to flush it. Like, that's what I tell the girls on my volleyball team all the time. When they make a mistake, they'll look over at the bench and they'll give me puppy dog eyes and they'll be like, oh, I messed up. And I just look at them like, flush it, get over it. Get over it. No one cares. No one cares you messed up. Keep
Yeah.
playing. You got another
Right.
point coming. And that's the approach I like to take to it, of like, just flush it. Just get it past it. Like, keep moving and prove them wrong. Just prove them wrong.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Katie. And I think that's a great place to end this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I mean, of course, it was a great time catching up, but also a great time sharing your experiences and letting people know that it's okay to stand up and it's okay to just go do it, just flush it. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for
Thank
sharing
you
your
for
experiences.
having me. It
Yeah.
was
And
fun.
of course, can you let people know where they can find you if they have any more questions?
Yeah, y'all can email me at the letter K, letter T, SHOE, the number 1 at gmail.com.
Perfect. And I'll put that in the description and also your website so people can see the amazing artwork that you do and also the design that you do. So for now, of course, we're going sponsor free, but I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. Until then, girl power. And a big thank you so much to those of you that listen till the end and those that listen at all. This is your host, Arjit Singh, and you've been listening to Kadam, the Small Steps podcast. If you found value in this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, let us know how we can make this better. A traditional career is always untraditional. Thanks for listening.